The massive Draconian warship, Blood Talon, cut through the darkness of space like a predator stalking its prey. Its hull, darker than the void itself, bristled with energy cannons that could level entire cities. Inside the command center, Commander Velthax stood before a holographic display that showed a small blue planet spinning peacefully in the distance. Earth looked so innocent from here, so helpless. Velthax's reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. His scales, each one the size of a human palm, caught the red glow of the ship's interior lighting. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, he was considered average for a Draconian warrior. His yellow eyes, cold as winter stars, studied the primitive world with the same interest a child might show an anthill before stepping on it. "Subcommander Raxhos," Velthax called out, his voice a low rumble that echoed through the bridge. "Show me what passes for civilization on this backwater planet." Raxhos, smaller but no less intimidating, manipulated the controls with clawed fingers. The display zoomed in, revealing continents, oceans, and tiny specks of light that marked human cities. "Behold, Commander, the mighty human empire," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. The bridge crew erupted in harsh laughter. These Draconians had conquered 17 worlds in the past decade. Each victory had been easier than the last. The pattern was always the same. Arrive, demand surrender, crush any resistance, and strip the planet of its resources. It was almost boring now. "Look at their transportation," sneered Intelligence Officer Zektara as she slithered closer to the display. Unlike the male warriors, she moved with fluid grace, her smaller frame built for speed and cunning rather than brute force. They still burn chemicals to move their vehicles. Chemicals! Can you imagine being so primitive? The display showed highways filled with cars, airports with jets taking off and landing, and ships crossing the oceans. To human eyes, it would have looked like a thriving civilization. To the Draconians, it looked like cavemen playing with fire. And their weapons, Raxhos added, pulling up military footage their long-range scanners had captured. Metal projectiles, fired by explosive powder. The same technology they used hundreds of their years ago. They haven't even figured out basic energy weapons. Velthax watched footage of human soldiers training, their rifles seeming laughably crude compared to Draconian plasma cannons. He had seen this type of resistance before. Primitive species always thought their numbers would save them. They were always wrong, sir, came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving transmissions from the planet. Shall I translate?" "Proceed," Velthax ordered. The bridge filled with the sounds of human voices, news broadcasts, radio shows, music and television programs. The translation systems worked over time, converting the babel of human languages into something the Draconians could understand. What they heard made them laugh even harder. Humans were arguing about politics, complaining about traffic, discussing sports scores, and debating what to have for dinner. Not one transmission mentioned preparing for war or detecting alien threats. These creatures had no idea what was coming for them. "They don't even know we're here," Zektara observed. "Their detection systems are so primitive, they probably think we're a meteor or space debris." She was wrong about that, but the Draconians had no way of knowing it yet. Deep beneath the city of Seoul, General Lee Minho sat in a reinforced bunker that officially didn't exist. Banks of computers surrounded him, their screens showing data that would have made the Draconians much less confident. South Korea's advanced radar systems had been tracking the alien fleet for 3 days now, and similar facilities around the world were doing the same. But Minho knew the value of appearing weak when you were strong. Let the invaders think Earth was helpless. Let them underestimate human intelligence, human preparation, and most importantly, human stubbornness. Back on the Blood Talon, Velthax was already planning the victory celebration. "How long until we reach optimal invasion distance?" he asked. His navigator, 6 hours, Commander. Shall I prepare the usual surrender demand? Make it short, Velthax replied. These humans won't understand big words anyway. Tell them to submit or be destroyed. Give them 1 of their hours to respond before we begin landing operations. The Draconian commander turned back to the display, watching Earth rotate slowly. In the void. Soon that beautiful blue marble would be just another conquered world in the Empire's collection. The humans would learn what every other species had learned, that resistance was futile when faced with superior draconian might. 17 worlds had already learned this lesson. Earth would be number 18, or so they thought. What the Draconians didn't understand was that humans had something no other species they'd conquered possessed, the ability to turn their apparent weaknesses into deadly strengths. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The invasion fleet continued its approach, confident in their superiority and certain of their victory. They had no idea they were flying into the most carefully prepared trap in galactic history. The morning sky over Seoul was crystal clear when the first Draconian ships broke through Earth's atmosphere. They descended like falling stars, their dark hulls gleaming in the sunlight as energy shields shimmered around them like soap bubbles. To any observer on the ground, it should have been a moment of pure terror, humanity's first contact with an alien species, and they were clearly not coming in peace. Instead, Major Han Ji-won was already strapped into the cockpit of her F-16 Fighting Falcon, 30,000 feet above the Korean peninsula. She had been airborne for 20 minutes along with her entire squadron. This wasn't panic or lucky timing, this was preparation. Dragon leader to all Dragon units, she spoke calmly into her radio. Targets are descending through 20,000 feet. Weapons are hot, remember your training. Her wingman, Captain Kim Tae-hyun, checked his missile systems one final time. They had drilled for this scenario countless times, though everyone had hoped it would remain just a drill. The world's military leaders had spent decades preparing for this possibility, even as they prayed it would never come. On the bridge of the Blood Talon, Commander Velthax watched his assault ships enter Earth's atmosphere with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The primitive humans below were probably running around in panic, their crude governments collapsing as they realized how helpless they truly were. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're detecting some aircraft in the area, but they appear to be fleeing, probably their military abandoning their posts." Velthax's reptilian lips curled into a smile. Typical. Fear is the first weapon of conquest. He was wrong about the fleeing part. Han Ji-won locked onto the lead Draconian vessel with her targeting system. The alien ship was massive compared to her fighter jet, but she had learned long ago that size wasn't everything in combat. David had beaten Goliath with a simple stone, and humanity had upgraded significantly since then. "Fox 3, she announced, firing her AIM-120 AMRAAM missile. The advanced air-to-air missile streaked through the sky at Mach 4, its sophisticated guidance system tracking the Draconian ship perfectly. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect plasma weapons and particle beams, had never encountered anything quite like human kinetic weapons. The explosion lit up the morning sky like a second sun. On the Draconian bridge, chaos erupted. Warning lights flashed red as damage reports poured in from the strike craft. "Impossible," roared Subcommander Raxhos. "Their primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields." But the evidence was right there on their sensors. One of their assault ships was tumbling toward the ground, its port engine completely destroyed. The humans had somehow hurt them with what looked like crude chemical rockets. "Evasive maneuvers," Velthax ordered. "All ships, random pattern. These humans are more cunning than we thought." Unfortunately for the Draconians, evasive maneuvers were exactly what the humans had been counting on. Private Cho Seung-hyun sat in a bunker, deep beneath the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, surrounded by more computer screens than most people saw in their entire lives. For 3 days, he had been coordinating with similar facilities around the world, tracking every movement of the alien fleet, predicting their approach vectors, and sharing that information with military units across the globe. The Draconians thought they were being unpredictable. In reality, every dodge, every course correction, every tactical maneuver was being analyzed by supercomputers and fed to human fighters in real time. "All units, this is Control," Seung-hyun spoke into his headset. "Target Alpha 7 is breaking left, Vector 270, descending through 15,000 feet. Assigned to Dragon 4. Captain Kim Tae-hyun received the information instantly. Dragon 4 confirmed target acquisition. His missile found its mark 3 seconds later. Lieutenant Kang Ji-ye had been waiting in the mountains north of Seoul for this moment. Her artillery battery had been positioned specifically to target the aliens' most likely landing zones. As the Draconians tried to set down their damaged ships, her M109 Paladin self-propelled howitzers opened fire. The 150mm shells weren't fancy. They were just big chunks of metal filled with explosives, fired by chemical propellant, exactly the kind of primitive technology the Draconians had been mocking. But when 40 of them landed on your position in the span of 30 seconds, fancy technology didn't matter much. Velthax watched in growing horror as his carefully planned invasion turned into a disaster. Half his assault craft were either destroyed or badly damaged. The humans weren't running in terror. They were fighting back with a coordination and effectiveness that defied everything his intelligence reports had told him. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Their communications should be chaos. Their military should be in disarray." Intelligence officer Zektara was frantically working at her station, trying to make sense of the human response. "Sir, they appear to have a planetary defense network we never detected. Every military unit seems to know exactly where we are and what we're doing." What the Draconians didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for war since the dawn of their species. They had fought each other for thousands of years, learning harsh lessons about tactics, strategy, and survival. More importantly, they had learned to share information instantly across vast distances, a skill they had developed for entertainment and commerce, but which worked just as well for warfare. Colonel Park Ji-soo coordinated the global response from her mobile command center, a vehicle that looked unremarkable from the outside, but contained communication equipment that could reach any military unit on Earth. She was simultaneously talking to fighter pilots over Korea, artillery crews in Europe, and submarine captains in the Pacific. "All stations, this is Overwatch," she broadcast. "Execute Phase 2, show our guests what human hospitality really looks like." The second wave of the human counterattack began as surface-to-air missiles launched from hidden positions around the world. The Draconians had expected primitive defenses that they could easily overwhelm. Instead, they faced a coordinated global response that treated their entire invasion fleet as a single target. By the time the sun set on that first day, Commander Velthax realized he had made the worst mistake of his military career. The humans weren't primitive at all. They were efficient, coordinated, and absolutely ruthless when threatened. Worst of all, they were just getting started. 3 days had passed since the Draconians first landed on Earth, and Sub-Commander Raxhos was beginning to understand why. His species had never encountered anything quite like humans before. He stood in what used to be downtown Seoul, surrounded by empty buildings that stretched toward a grey sky. The silence was unnerving. "Where did they all go?" muttered Trooper Vexmar, his plasma rifle sweeping nervously across abandoned storefronts. The Draconian soldier was used to conquered populations cowering in their homes or fleeing in panic. This eerie quiet felt wrong. Raxhos studied his scanner readings. According to their intelligence, this city should have housed nearly 10 million humans. Now his instruments detected fewer than 1,000 life signs in the entire area. It was as if the population had simply vanished into thin air. What he didn't know was that they had vanished underground. Captain Song Minji crouched in the Seoul Metro tunnels, 50 feet beneath the alien patrol. She had spent 2 years mapping every subway line, maintenance tunnel, and underground passage in the city as part of a classified military program. What had seemed like boring preparation work was now keeping thousands of civilians and soldiers alive. Her earpiece crackled softly. "Ghost Leader, this is underground control. Enemy patrol is directly above your position, moving east toward Gangnam Station." Song Minji smiled grimly. The Draconians had superior technology, but they had never learned to think in 3 dimensions. They controlled the surface, but the real soul existed in layers beneath their feet. "Copy that, Control. Ghost Team is moving to intercept." She signaled to her squad, and they began moving through tunnels that had been built decades ago for trains, but now served as highways for human resistance fighters. Every major city on Earth had similar networks: London's Underground, New York's subway system, Tokyo's metro lines. The Draconians had studied human surface infrastructure for months, but they had completely ignored what lay beneath. Sergeant Bae Hyunwoo emerged from a maintenance access shaft directly behind the alien patrol. The Draconians' energy shields were designed to stop plasma bolts and particle beams, but a simple combat knife slipped between armor plates just fine. Vexmar collapsed without making a sound, and Bay melted back into the shadows before the other aliens even realized what had happened. "Contact, contact!" Raxhose shouted into his communicator as plasma bolts lit up the empty street. But there was nothing to shoot at. The humans had struck and vanished like ghosts. This was happening all over the planet. In the countryside outside Busan, farmer Choi Dong-yun watched a column of Draconian hover tanks approach his rice fields. To alien eyes, he looked like exactly what he appeared to be, an old man tending to his crops, no threat to anyone. They had no way of knowing that he had served 20 years in the South Korean Special Forces before retiring to farm. The lead tank hit his first improvised explosive device at exactly 2:47 p.m. The explosion sent the massive vehicle tumbling through the air like a toy. As the remaining tanks tried to scatter, they discovered that Dong-yun hadn't been working alone. Every farmer for 50 kilometers around was a military veteran, and they had spent months preparing their fields for unwelcome visitors. The Draconians had expected to face primitive armies with outdated weapons. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire population where every citizen was a potential soldier. Dr. Yunsora worked frantically in her underground laboratory beneath Seoul National University. The space had originally been built as a nuclear fallout shelter during the Cold War, but now it served as a research facility where human scientists studied captured Draconian technology. "Hand me that power coupling," she called to her assistant, Dr. Lim Jae-won. They had been working for 72 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination while they tried to reverse engineer alien plasma weapons. "The energy matrix is completely different from anything we've seen," Jae-won muttered, examining a piece of equipment they had salvaged from a crashed Draconian fighter. "But the basic principles are the same. They're just using exotic matter to contain and direct the plasma." Above them, the sound of plasma fire echoed through the city streets as Draconian patrols fought shadows. Below, human ingenuity was hard at work. The Draconians' biggest mistake had been assuming that human cities were just like the cities on the other worlds they had conquered. Most alien civilizations built outward, expanding across the surface of their planets. Humans, living on a world with limited space and harsh weather, had learned to build down. Master Sergeant Oh Youngmin led his squad through abandoned subway tunnels that connected 3 different districts of Seoul. His men carried a mixture of human and captured alien weapons, moving through a network that the Draconians didn't even know existed. "Control, this is Tunnel Rat 6, he whispered into his radio. "We have eyes on the alien command post. Looks like they've set up shop in City Hall." "Roger, Tunnel Rat 6. Can you get close enough for a strike?" Oh Youngmin studied the building through his night vision scope. The Draconians had excellent sensors, but they were all pointed outward, watching for attacks from street level. None of them were aimed down at the storm drains. "Affirmative, Control. Give us 20 minutes. In Tokyo, Major Nakamura Kenji was leading a similar operation. Through the city's extensive subway system, the Draconians had established a perimeter around the Imperial Palace, thinking they controlled the heart of Japan. They had no idea that Kenji's team could approach within 50 meters of their position using tunnels that were older than most countries. The pattern was the same everywhere the aliens had landed. They thought they were fighting armies, but they were actually fighting entire civilizations that had gone underground. Lieutenant Sim Soo-jin coordinated resistance activities from a bunker deep beneath the Blue House, South Korea's presidential residence. Her screens showed similar operations in progress around the world: London, Paris, New York, Moscow. Every major city had become a maze of tunnels and hidden passages where human fighters struck without warning and vanished without a trace. "All units, this is underground control," she broadcast on encrypted channels. "Phase 3 is authorized. Time to show our guests what human engineering really looks like." Across the globe, charges detonated simultaneously in hundreds of locations. Not random explosions, but carefully planned demolitions that collapsed. Key bridges blocked major highways and cut power lines to Draconian positions. The aliens suddenly found themselves stranded on islands of territory with no way to support each other. Commander Velthax stared at the tactical display aboard his flagship, watching red warning lights blink across the map of Earth. In just 3 days, his invasion had gone from a simple conquest to a nightmare of guerrilla warfare. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we're losing contact with ground units all across the planet. The humans appear to have some kind of underground civilization we never detected." Velthax's clawed hands gripped the armrests of his command chair. 17 worlds his people had conquered, and none of them had prepared him for this. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were using their own planet as a weapon against the invaders. "Increase orbital bombardment," he ordered desperately. "Bring down their tunnel systems." "Sir, we've tried that. Their underground networks are too deep and too extensive. Some of them appear to be built into natural cave systems that go down for miles." For the first time since the invasion began, Commander Velthax felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare: doubt. The humans had turned their entire world into a fortress, and his forces were trapped on the surface, while the real battle raged in depths they couldn't even reach. The Draconians controlled the sky and parts of the surface, but the humans owned everything beneath their feet. And in a war of attrition, that was going to make all the difference. 1 week into what was supposed to be a simple conquest, Commander Velthax realized he was trapped in a nightmare of his own making. The holographic display in his command center showed a planet-wide disaster. Red warning lights blinked across every continent as his ground forces reported losses that shouldn't have been possible. "Sir," Intelligence Officer Zektara's voice trembled as she delivered the latest casualty reports. "We've lost contact with 70% of our ground forces. The humans, they're not just fighting us anymore. They're using our own weapons against us." Velthax's reptilian features contorted with rage and disbelief. In 7 days, the humans had gone from using primitive chemical weapons to wielding draconian plasma technology. It was impossible. No species learned that quickly, but humans weren't. Like any species the Draconians had encountered before. Corporal Nam Jae-wan crouched behind the rubble of what used to be Incheon International Airport, a modified draconian plasma rifle in his hands. The weapon hummed with alien energy, but the modifications were purely human, practical, efficient, and deadly effective. He had been a mechanical engineering student at Seoul National University just 1 week ago. Now he was part of a global network of humans who were reverse engineering alien technology faster than their creators could believe possible. "Control, this is Scavenger 7, he whispered into his radio. "I have eyes on another damaged Draconian fighter. Looks like the power core is intact." "Copy, Scavenger 7. Recovery team is en route. Hold position and keep that salvage safe." The crashed alien fighters had become treasure troves for human engineers. Every piece of Draconian technology was studied, analyzed, and improved upon within hours. What took the aliens centuries to develop, humans were mastering in days. Dr. Kim Yuna worked frantically in her underground laboratory, surrounded by a team of the world's brightest minds who had all converged on a single goal: understanding how Draconian technology worked and how to use it against them. "The plasma containment field is elegant but overcomplicated," she explained to her team as they dismantled another alien weapon. Her assistant, Dr. Park Jin-hee, looked up from her workstation where she was analyzing alien power cells. "Professor Kim, I think I've figured out their energy source. It's incredibly efficient, but they're only using about 40% of its potential. If we redesign the power coupling," this was happening in hundreds of locations around the world. In hidden laboratories, abandoned factories, and underground bunkers, human scientists were taking apart Draconian technology and putting it back together in ways that made it better, faster, and more deadly. Colonel Park Ji-soo coordinated the global counteroffensive from her mobile command center, watching as human forces equipped with hybrid human-alien technology began to turn the tide of battle. "All units, this is Overwatch," she broadcast on secure channels. "Dr. Kim's electromagnetic pulse modifications are now online. All teams with EMP capability, prepare for synchronized strike in T-60 seconds. The Draconians had made a fatal error in their invasion planning. They had assumed that humans would react like every other species they had conquered, with panic, chaos, and eventual surrender. Instead, they had handed humanity a graduate-level course in advanced alien technology, and humans were proving to be very quick students. Master Sergeant O. Youngmin positioned his sniper team on a rooftop, overlooking the Draconian command post in downtown Seoul. His rifle was still human-made, but the scope was pure alien technology, modified to work with human electronics and powered by a Draconian energy cell. Control, this is Ghost Sniper. I have a clear shot on their commander, waiting for EMP activation. Roger, Ghost Sniper. EMP goes live in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. The electromagnetic pulse erupted across the city like invisible lightning. Dr. Kim's modifications to the captured Draconian EMP generators had created something the aliens never expected, a weapon that shut down their energy shields for exactly 47 seconds while leaving human electronics completely unaffected. O. Youngmin took his shot. The Draconian commander's head exploded in a shower of alien blood and bone fragments. Around the city, similar scenes played out as human snipers, equipped with alien-enhanced weapons, eliminated key targets during the brief window when their shields were down. Lieutenant Sim Soo-jin watched the tactical display from her underground command center as Draconian positions across the globe went dark. The aliens had thought their advanced technology would give them an insurmountable advantage. Instead, it had become their weakness. "Sir," she reported to General Lee Min-ho, "we're receiving surrender requests from isolated Draconian units on Hive. Every continent. They're offering to trade technology for safe passage off-world." The general's weathered face showed no emotion. "Denied. They came here to conquer us. Now they get to learn what it feels like to be the conquered." Above Seoul, the last Draconian transport ship tried desperately to take off from the ruins of Gimpo Airport. Captain Lee Soo-hyun tracked the fleeing vessel from her position in the mountains, her surface-to-air missile system now powered by alien technology and guided by sensors that the Draconians themselves had brought to Earth. "Fox 1, she announced calmly. The modified missile streaked through the sky at twice the speed of its original design. The alien transport, its shield still down from the EMP blast, exploded in a fireball that could be seen from orbit on the Bridge of the Blood Talon. Commander Velthak stared in horror at the tactical display. His invasion fleet was being systematically destroyed by weapons that looked suspiciously like his own technology, but somehow performed better than the originals. "How are they doing this?" he roared. "How can a primitive species master our technology so quickly?" Sub-Commander Raxhos, his voice barely above a whisper, provided the answer that Velthax didn't want to hear. "Sir, they're not primitive. They never were. They're adaptive. They learn from everything they encounter and make it better." The terrible truth was finally sinking in. The Draconians hadn't invaded a primitive world. They had attacked a planet, full of engineers, scientists, and soldiers who treated every new challenge as a puzzle to be solved. Corporal Nam Jae-wan, still crouched in the ruins of Incheon, spoke into his radio as he watched another Draconian fighter crash in flames. "Control. This is Scavenger 7, another bird down, and this one's power core looks intact too. Copy, Scavenger 7. Dr. Kim wants that one for her new project, something about building our own starships." Nam Jae-wan smiled grimly. The Draconians had come to Earth, expecting to find a primitive species they could easily conquer. Instead, they had found humanity, a species that didn't just fight back but learned, adapted, and improved everything they touched. The invasion was over. The real war was just beginning, and this time, the humans would be the ones doing the invading. The final transmission from the Draconian expedition lasted exactly 43 seconds. Commander Velthax, his scaled hide torn open by human shrapnel and his yellow eyes dimming with approaching death, crawled across the twisted metal floor of his command center toward the emergency beacon. His clawed hands, once steady enough to direct the conquest of 17 worlds, now shook as he activated the long-range communicator one last time. Blood, dark as motor oil, pooled beneath him as he struggled to deliver a warning that would never reach its destination. "To the High Command of the Draconian Empire," he wheezed, each word costing him precious strength. "Do not send reinforcements to the third planet of this system. Do not attempt to avenge us. The species called humans, they are not what we believed. A human explosive detonated somewhere in the ship's lower decks, and the lights flickered. Velthax could hear the sound of cutting torches as human soldiers worked their way through the hull toward his position. We thought we were hunting prey, he continued, his voice growing weaker. But we were the ones being hunted from the moment we entered their space. They let us land. They wanted us to land. Everything was a trap. The commander's breathing became labored as his body began to shut down. They are not primitive, they are efficient. They do not waste resources on advancement when simple solutions work better. And now they have our technology too. The transmission ended as Captain Lee Soo-hyun's breaching team cut through the final bulkhead and entered the Draconian command center. They found Velthax's body slumped over the communication console, his warning message lost in the electromagnetic interference created by Earth's defensive systems. No signal ever reached Draconian space. 3 months later, Dr. Park Jin-hee stood in a facility that hadn't existed a year ago. Earth's first interstellar shipyard, built into the side of a mountain in South Korea. Around her, human engineers worked alongside modified Draconian construction equipment to assemble something the galaxy had never seen before. "The fusion drive is online," reported Chief Engineer Yoo Soyeon as she climbed down from the ship's massive engine compartment. "We've improved the Draconian design by 40%. Better fuel efficiency, higher top speed, and it won't break. Down every 1,000 light-years like their ships did." The vessel taking shape in the mountain was a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology, but it was purely Earth in its design philosophy. Where Draconian ships were built for intimidation and overwhelming firepower, the human ship was built for efficiency and adaptability. "What about weapons?" asked Dr. Park as she reviewed the construction reports. "Better than anything the Draconians ever built," Yoo Soyeon replied with satisfaction. "We kept their plasma technology, but redesigned the delivery systems. Human, targeting computers, human tactical software, human reliability standards. Our weapons will work when we need them to." General Lee Min-ho toured the facility with a mixture of pride and determination. 6 months ago, he had been planning the defense of a single planet. Now he was preparing humanity's first expedition to the stars. "How many ships will be ready for the first mission?" he asked. 12, replied Colonel Park Ji-soo. "Not large, by Draconian standards, but each one is worth 3 of their ships in actual combat capability," the general nodded. "And crews?" "Volunteers only, sir. We had 50,000 applications for 600 positions. Humanity had learned valuable lessons from their Draconian teachers. The most important lesson was that advanced technology meant nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. The Draconians had superior weapons, but they had made the fatal mistake of underestimating their enemy." Sergeant Kim Dae-hyun supervised the loading of the human expedition fleet's cargo holds. Unlike Draconian ships, which carried only weapons and basic supplies, the human vessels were packed with equipment that their former enemies would never have thought to bring. Medical supplies, repair equipment, communication systems, scientific instruments, emergency shelters, water purification systems, food production equipment. The humans weren't just going to war, they were going to survive and adapt no matter what they found among the stars. "Sir," reported Corporal Nam Jae-won, who had been promoted from scavenger to logistics coordinator, "the last of the Draconian technology has been integrated. We've reverse-engineered everything we could salvage. And improved most of it, Kim," Dae-hyun added with a grin. "The Draconians built their equipment to impress. We built ours to work. The final launch preparations took place under a grey autumn sky." Captain Song Min-ji, former tunnel fighter turned starship commander, ran through her pre-flight checklist one last time. Her ship, the Soul's Revenge, was the lead vessel in humanity's first interstellar fleet. "All systems green," reported her engineering officer. "We're ready to show the galaxy what Earth hospitality looks like." The human fleet launched without fanfare or ceremony. There were no crowds cheering, no bands playing, no speeches about glory and conquest. The ships simply lifted off from their hidden bases, and disappeared into the darkness of space, carrying with them the hopes and determination of an entire species. Their destination was the Draconian home system, 17 light-years from Earth. The journey took 3 weeks, half the time it had taken the original Draconian fleet to reach. Earth, human improvements to the alien faster-than-light drive had made the impossible routine. When the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Draconian territory, they found exactly what they had expected: a sprawling empire that had grown fat and lazy on easy conquests. The Draconians had never faced an enemy who fought back effectively. They had certainly never faced an enemy who could learn from defeat and come back stronger. The first Draconian patrol ships that approached the human fleet were destroyed before they could send a warning. The second wave suffered the same fate. By the time the Draconian High Command realized they were under attack, human forces had already neutralized their orbital defenses and begun landing operations on their primary military worlds. The Draconians had taught humanity everything they knew about warfare, technology, and conquest. Now humanity was about to teach them something in return, what it felt like to be on the receiving end of their own tactics. Engineer Yu Soyon, now serving as the fleet's chief technology officer, monitored the invasion from her command ship. "Sir," she reported to Fleet Admiral Li Suhyun, "Draconian resistance is lighter than expected. Their technology hasn't improved in centuries. They never learned to adapt." "Just like their intelligence reports said about us," the Admiral replied. "The difference is we were lying. The conquest of the Draconian Empire took 6 months. When it was over, humanity controlled 17 star systems and had access to trade routes that connected half the galaxy. More importantly, they had announced their presence to the universe in a way that no one could ignore. The message was simple and clear. Earth was no longer a primitive backwater planet. Humanity had joined the galactic community, and they were not interested in being anyone's victims ever again. The Draconians had called Earth primitive. None of them had survived to correct that assessment, but their former empire would serve as a permanent reminder to the galaxy that humans were a species that learned from their mistakes and never made the same error twice. The age of human expansion among the stars had begun.